call council back into order, and we are now on to 11.2. No, 11.1 under Corporate and Community Services Standing Committee. So I'll pass it over to Councillor Madigan.
Thank you very much, Mayor Saunderson. I hope everybody's rested for that 10-minute break. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor MacLeod. Be it resolved that Council approve the Accessibility Advisory Committee minutes of April 4th, 2019, including the recommendations contained therein.
All right, Council, I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Councillor Madigan.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor MacLeod. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2019-043, being a bylaw to provide the levy and collection of sums required by the Collingwood Business Improvement Area for the year 2019, be enacted and passed this 10th day of June 2019.
Thank you. Council, I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried.
I'm just going to continue. I was waiting for your lead, but I'm seeing
Okay,
concentrating, so I'm going to just do what I do. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor MacLeod. Be it resolved that Council receive the Collingwood Downtown BIA Board of Management minutes of May 9th, 2019 and the BIA Annual General Meeting minutes of April 11th, 2019, and the recommendation contained therein regarding the garbage pickup be deferred for further consultation in preparation of the 2022-2023 waste collection renegotiation.
Thank you. Unless there's questions or comments, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Next item, Councillor Madigan.
Thank you.
11.2.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Berman. Be it resolved that Council that staff report CAO 2019-02 be received and that Council direct the CAO to sign the updated MOU together with other BDC partners, renewing it for a period of 1 year with an option to extend it beyond this period at the town's discretion, and further that Council authorize staff to explore opportunities to review the terms of the relationship with the partners and develop further service delivery options, including identification of a new BDC co-location site which the partners and the town staff could move to in downtown Collingwood by the end of 2020.
Council, any questions or comments on this item? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. Although I'm not on the committee, I was in the audience, and it was very exciting to hear what the future may hold for the BDC. Indeed.
Good. And I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Councillor Madigan.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Berman. Be it resolved that staff report PRC 2019-08 be received and Council direct staff to transition the management of the Collingwood Elvis Festival beginning in 2020 through the municipal special event permitting process.
Thank you. Questions or comments, Council? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm inclined not to agree with this recommendation. The Collingwood Elvis Festival has been operated by the town of Collingwood, or in the town of Collingwood for the past 25 years, and it is integrally connected with the Collingwood brand, in my view. And so if we're going to start to divest ourselves of the support activities for the execution of the festival, it seems to me that we should do this as carefully as possible. And to allocate the festival to a operator on a sort of a first come, first serve basis, to me is not as robust of a process as compared to an RFP process. RFP would allow for multiple vendors of interest to submit. It would allow staff to review all of the applications in one sitting and compare them to each other. It would allow staff to control every aspect of the festival that they wanted to see addressed through the RFP process, and overall would allow give them the community, or at least give staff, give me a higher level of confidence that the festival will be run in a way that it will continue to reflect positively on the town of Collingwood and the town of Collingwood brand.
We've noted that, and we are dealing with the motion that's on the table, so if that gets defeated, then we would go on to the option A. So I've noted your opposition, and we'll continue with this item, and then once the votes happen, we will progress based on that vote. Councillor Hanlon had her hand up, and then I'll guide you, Councillor Jeffrey.
Yes, my concern with the option that staff's recommended is that it identifies that there's 3 proponents who have expressed interest in taking on the Elvis Festival, but that our decision should be based on first come, first serve. And to my mind, it just doesn't seem fair that the first guy who noticed that we would be not pursuing this as a municipality sent in his letter that he therefore gets it, even though the other 2, and I don't know if any of them are, even though the other 2 may in fact be better, or one of them may be better, or maybe if we were to open it up to a process, we would get the best person responding. I am mindful of the comments here that an RFP can be quite a detailed and difficult, I guess that's what I'm supposed to gather from this process. But I had a thought of whether, if staff was to look at it again, and maybe this is my question through you, Mr. Mayor, whether an RFP process could be more tailored to the kind of questions that would arise through a special municipal event permit, because they all seem to be relevant issues. So that's my question.
Okay, I'll pass that through to Director Culver, and maybe Dean, you can explain the issues between option A and option B in terms of the liability and ownership issue for the town, and the way that the option B might work in implementation.
Excuse me, thank you, Your Worship. I think what's probably should be clarified more than anything is the difference between option A and option B is how much the town will remain invested in the Elvis Festival. The RFP process, based on our analysis, requires that that the town remain vested in the festival to some extent. There's some financial risk, there's some staff resource allocation still required. We're essentially leaving ourselves 1 foot in the proposition and taking on some accountability. So essentially, it would end up being a partial divestiture. The event permit process is a complete divestiture. We would be invested in so much as we have a process that guides that activity. But at the end of the day, the RFP and the event permitting process would have a lot of the same content. We'd still be vetting people for credibility. We'd still be vetting people for insurance. They'd have to go through fire, police. They would have to go through all of the criteria that are part of our event permitting process, regardless of whether it's in an RFP or not. But the amount of participation the town has, and therefore the amount of resources put to it, is really the differentiating factor between the 2 options.
I have a follow-up question
Yes, go ahead.
to Director Culver. So my question might be then, Let's assume those are all good reasons that we would want to go for a special event permitting process. Is there some way that we can pick the person who gets the special event license that's fair to, like, let everyone know we're going to issue one, right? And ask people to submit, and then we pick one?
Director Culver?
So through your worship, the challenge for us is that's not a normal part of our event permitting process. Normally, people approach us and say we have an idea and we vet it for event design or like I say, all the criteria. And we have the ability to not issue the permit based on approvals that go range from the OPP to myself, based on concerns that we have if they're not fulfilled. So we don't really have that part of that mechanism as part of the event permitting process, and I don't exactly know how we would construct a selection, which is why the RFP option is on the table. But the only way we can do that is if we have something to offer in return for that RFP, which means that we have to buy the license and we have to remain committed to that brand and that brand standard, and protect it as the license holder, which basically makes us accountable and puts us in a position of being at least partially invested in a festival going forward. It becomes a very subjective exercise, unfortunately. Otherwise, our event permitting process allows us to be quite objective. Our RFP process is allowed to be objective with some subjectivity attached to it, but in a measured way. And unfortunately, anything else, based on our analysis, puts us into a subjective position of choosing one over another, and that is not typically the role of a municipal body.
I'll just comment, Mr. Mayor, that I know that it wouldn't be our normal way to handle special event permitting process. I totally understand that. But and I guess maybe it's a question of this, if this motion fails, what I would be asking is for a report from staff to come back to us on option B, so that we could be considering divesting ourselves, because I think that was the will of council, but still have a fair process when we have more than, as we see, at least 3 people who would like to take this on, in terms of who should be entitled to it.
Duly noted. You have it, Councillor McLeod?
Through you, Your Worship, to Director Culver, I think that what we're hearing from my fellow council members is concern that for fairness and for quality, that we have 25 years in this thing, and we don't want it to be, a tin monkey walking down the street and 2 flags. So we heard from, not from you at our committee meeting, but from one of your workers. Could you, Karen, sorry, could you perhaps expand on some of the comments that she made regarding the assistance that will be provided to whomever is going to be running this thing, so that we know that it's not going to be crummy?
Sure. Through your worship, perhaps I could ask Karen to address that, since she was the one that made the original comments. I'd like to make sure that I'm following what was said.
Ms. Cubic, come on forward. Sounds almost like a game show.
Through your worship. So for Dean's benefit, we had talked about the download of institutional knowledge that we would provide to the next management team, regardless of the method used to choose them. We want to be cognizant of staff time, and I think there was discussion about is there an option to second a staff member into that position, and we didn't think that there was any sort of mechanism to make that happen, but information, best practices, templates, programming, the things that we typically try to put in place, the things that we learned over the years, what works, what doesn't, some standards, what we would typically pay tribute artists and headliners. That's all information that we are willing to impart, and we as staff can take the time to put that all together in a document to hand to someone. We're, even within our special event permitting process, we provide facilitation, so that information and that the opportunity to come and discuss with us, and to brainstorm with us will always be there. It's just, I don't think we were committing to keeping a staff person in a management role.
If I could add, Your Worship.
Go ahead, Dean.
The other thing, and so on the additive side, we have, as Karen mentioned, institutional knowledge to share. On the permit side, on the permission side, like I mentioned before, we have a lot of signatures that have to be applied to that permit, including mine. And my signature is a compilation of all of our staff knowledge. So if we are not comfortable with that plan, if they provide a site diagram that we're not comfortable with, if they provide us with things that have us question the quality outcome, we have the ability to say no to the permit. So there is a qualitative component to it based on our institutional knowledge that we carry with us. So if that provides some comfort, I'm not sure, but I wanted to make sure you were aware.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I just wanted to say that I support staff's recommendation. My question is that whoever runs this is going to have to be able to obtain an Elvis trademark license. I'm not sure how many of those they pass around to be able to do this event. So I guess my question through to the director is, would that be kind of a pre-vetting, if you would, of people that are able to apply to our special permitting process?
Your Worship, so obviously that was one of the challenges, that was a big part of our analysis, is how do we offer somebody the Elvis Festival without owning the license, which is why we recommended in the RFP option, having to purchase a license and sublet it. We have had conversations with EPE, and we feel that they have their own qualification process, so they would be a part of our event permitting process, where they would be required to complete that and receive an EPE license before they'd even be considered for us. So, but we have heard from EPE that they're open to that idea as well. So it's not, we don't believe it to be restricted or restrictive, but it would be a requirement of our event permitting process.
Are there any other comments? I know, Councillor Doherty, you got your hand up. Councillor Lanigan.
Thank you. It was, we had a long productive chat at the committee, and a lot of questions were raised. And I think every week we sit and we thank our staff for the presentations they give us, and I think this one we need to listen to them. We voted 8-0 because the deputy mayor was absent to divest herself of this, and there's a lot of things that will be put in place to make sure that we get the proper person. It's not going to be Steve and I running the festival, which would be fun for us but horrible for the town. But what came out of that meeting is we could not have the festival because nobody fit it. We get to set the standards so we continue the continuity of the festival, and one of them was that they would have to obtain an EPE thing, and if we did RFP it, then we would have to stay in it and manage it as a town, and that would go against the resolution that we passed unanimously in a recorded vote. So it was kind of, having both of those options was good for the public to be able to come out and voice their opinion, but if we went with anything other than the option B, it would go against the resolution that was passed in a recorded vote 8-0. So staff answered tons of questions that night, and I think that one of those three people are exemplary, and they run festivals all over North America already that have to do with EP. So I think we have a great competition, and I think the festival will continue in 2020. But most importantly, through Karen, we need to let the people know that it is happening in 2019. There is some misconception out there. So the Elvis Festival will be happening. The mayor will be singing his favorite Elvis song on the main stage at noon on Friday.
That's not marketing, Bob.
That main stage will be in Orangeville. But no, I think this is a clear-cut vote, and there's a lot of time and energy put into this, and it is following the direction that council put forward.
Thank you. Councillor Doherty? No, are there any other comments before I go to Councillor Doherty? Because she will be making her second round. No? Okay, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, and I appreciate the discussion, and I certainly do appreciate the reassurance from staff that the selection and the standards would be rigorous. But at the end of the day, I don't really see any difference between an RFP or putting it out to, or a permit application process. And the advantage for the RFP would be that we would be able to, or they would be able to ascertain who is out there, and there may be applicants that we aren't even aware of that could do an even more outstanding job than we ourselves ever thought of doing. And that is not to cast aspersions on anybody who has already expressed an interest. It's just to say, you don't know until you ask. And in this way, we're not asking.
Okay, point taken. So with that being said, I'm gonna call the vote, and this is for option B, which is through the municipal special event permitting process. All in favor? Opposed? Be noted. That is passed. Councillor Madigan.
Yes, so just before we get to the standing committee report, we had a great presentation done on the accelerator program, so it came late to the agenda, and I apologize. Moved by myself and second by Councillor Berman. Be it resolved that council directs staff to prepare a staff report to further investigate the implementation of an accelerator program, including the required resources needed for the program.
And this council came out of the presentation from the BDC. Gillian Farley talked about an opportunity for an accelerator tech hub at the BDC, through the BDC, and in discussions with Director Ridlow, we needed to put this in place to get some actions taken so that we can further this process. So, any questions or comments, council? Seeing none, then I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Councillor Madigan.
Moved by myself and second by Councillor Berman. Be it resolved that council refer the request for a staff resource dedicated to implementing Bike Town initiatives, including consideration for a 4-month student co-op opportunity, to the 2020 budget for further consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Madigan, and this is also a follow-up to the presentation by Justin Jones of the Trails Committee to look into biking initiatives and a request to have something considered in the next year's budget. Any questions or comments? Deputy Mayor.
My apologies, I don't seem to have that.
No, these are add-ons, so, and speaking
Oh,
of
my,
the clerk, they're
okay,
being,
I heard him say add-on for, sorry, Councillor Madigan, I heard you say add-on for the first one. So
this is
these are
also,
subsequent?
this is also, yes.
Okay, thank you. My
These are
apologies.
just 2 action items that we needed to clean up before we do the standing committee report.
Sorry. I got it.
No? Yeah.
Councillor Madigan.
Just a quick comment, Mr. Jones works for a company that this is his job. He goes around Ontario. A lot of good questions came out of that. We asked him what was the best place in Ontario to ride a bike for infrastructure, and he said it was, as a city, Ottawa. And I said, what other municipality of our size is the best? And he said, by far, Collingwood. So this is something that we're just moving forward and striving to the active transportation and utilizing our ridiculous amounts of trails that we have within our community. And it was nice to hear that once again we are #1. Our committee was such a feel-good committee that night, and we had great stories. Everybody was smiling after they sat through 3 hours of listening. It was a great time. So hopefully everybody can appreciate this and support it.
All right. Councillor Jeffrey.
Mayor Saunderson, can we reread the motion, please?
Yes. Be it resolved, the council refer the request for a staff resource dedicated to implementing Bike Town initiatives, including consideration of a 4-month student co-op opportunity, to the 2020 budget for further consideration.
Or referral to the budget?
It's referral to the budget process, just to consider the request in the context of next year's budget. Okay. Seeing no other questions or comments, and I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Now we're into the committee report.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Berman. Be it resolved that council receive the Corporate and Community Services Standing Committee report from its meeting held June 3rd, 2019 as presented.
That's a good meeting. Councillor Madigan, is there anything you want to add to the staff?
Absolutely not. It was a great job. Everybody had a lovely meeting, and it was a good news story on every presentation that we had.
All right. That being said, I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Madigan, and we are now into staff reports, item 12.1, T 2019-12 Judicial Inquiry Costing. Sorry, Councillor Doherty, do you have that, put it on the table for us?
Sleep at the switch. Moved by me and seconded by Deputy Mayor Hull, be it resolved the council receive staff report T 2019-12 and authorize an increase in the 2019 budget for the judicial inquiry be increased an additional $3 million and authorize the use of the asset sale proceeds to fund the shortfall to put on the table.
I'll get to you, Councillor Jeffrey. First, I'll look to Treasurer Leonard.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to mention some cautionary notes before we discuss the staff report. First, under Section 291 of the Municipal Act, the municipality must prepare a balanced budget. While we already have adopted the budget estimates, anytime we add an item such as for instance, the curling club condenser repair, we would provide the estimated expenditures and the funding source to maintain balance. So in order to ask for a budget increase, staff also have to identify both the cost estimate and potential source or sources of funding. Secondly, the figures in the report are estimates only and are subject to change. Since the writing of this report, there have been another $102,000 worth of expenditures, and we haven't begun to receive the May payables or even begin to look at them. Thirdly, and probably one of the most important reasons, is that we don't control any of the process, which puts the judicial inquiry solely at the mercy of the courts. Fourth, it's too early in the year to determine if we will have a surplus or how large that possible surplus may be in light of some significant assessment reviews with potentially large write-offs. And even if we could approximate any potential surplus, it wouldn't be prudent to consider this as a means of funding current year expenditures because it's not a certainty. And finally, we're asking that the shortfall be funded from the asset sale proceeds. We have no idea what that shortfall may end up being, and in hindsight, the recommendation should have included a statement to the effect of any shortfall funded through asset sale proceeds be returned as soon as possible to that reserve fund. Normally, it is our practice to ensure that all operating expenses are funded through means other than drawing on a reserve fund. So in other words, we would apply any 2019 surplus, the operating contingency reserve and the general reserve to these expenses before considering drawing on any of the reserve funds that we may have. It would be our intention to put the funds, any funds that were required from the asset sale proceeds back as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Marjorie. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Despite what our treasurer has just reported, I just don't feel the only thing that I can support in this is receiving the report on the expenses. We've agreed to a public consultation, and I think we have to take that seriously, and I don't think that we should be spending any of that money until we consult with the public as to what they saw for the use of those funds. Also, I guess in my training, a budget is a budget. You come in under budget or you come in over budget. And how you find the funds to do that in the meantime. I mean, we're committed to paying our bills. I think an example I used at SIC was the City of Ottawa budgeted $70 million for snow plowing, but their snow plowing came in at $135 million. And they were tapping into reserves to pay that until they could figure out what the plan was going forward. So for me, I think we should not be using judicial inquiry funds or committing to use them until we've heard from the public as to their priorities. And that, I guess my question would be, I can't recall how much our line of credit is. The town of Collingwood.
Through me to Marjorie, can you give us that information?
Through your worship, the line of credit is $6 million, but it has to be, because it's short-term borrowing, it has to be paid by December 31st.
Fair enough.
So before I look for a seconder on that, I've got your motion amendment. I'll go around the table for other council members to comment on this motion, and then I will come back and get a seconder for your amendment. Any other comments? Councillor Hamlin?
Sorry, I have a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to our treasurer. Could you just remind me what our surplus was for 2018?
$2,285,000 through your worship. And also just one other small item as well, just bear in mind that if we end up with a deficit at the end of this year, it is the first thing that comes out of the 2020 budget.
So my next, just a follow-up question on that. So the surplus that we've just been looking at with the end of 2018, as I understood the process, I went to various reserve funds based on a resolution of council in 2017. And so my next question through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff is if there was a will, could we amend whatever the 2017 document was to allocate the surplus funds to the judicial inquiry? Or are we best, I guess the other alternative, are we best just to leave this all with staff? I'm of a mind to support Councillor Jeffrey's position on this.
I think and I'll look to the CAO, when we passed the motion earlier tonight to accept the report on the fourth quarter variance and the surplus, it's being applied as per the 2017 protocol. I think under other business, Councillor Berman's going to bring up a request to have that examined later in the year in anticipation of the 2020 year. But I think right now what we're looking at is whether or not we're comfortable applying the net sale proceeds in advance of us completing our community engagement. It has started, and looking, I think, for staff direction and how, if we do not apply the net proceeds, how we might come up with those funds. And it seems to me with our reserve fund study, we had 2.5 in the capital asset management and 1 million in our land acquisition, and maybe there's an opportunity there. I'd leave it to staff. I would certainly suggest we leave it to staff to find those funds, and then when we've conducted our engagement process and have a better idea of the cost of this inquiry when it's done, we look at how we would apply the funding once the dust is settled. And I think that's the basis of your motion, Councillor Jeffrey, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Councillor McLeod.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am 100% in support of what Councillor Jeffrey has had to say. I do not want to spend a dime of the asset sale proceeds on this process. It is disheartening to sit here through each day and listen to what is being said, and I don't want to bring any more rainy clouds onto our town. I think that we have an opportunity here, a once in a lifetime opportunity to do something extraordinary, and I do not want to impinge on it at all. And so I would support an amendment or a severing or whatever is required to support Councillor Jeffrey's idea on that issue.
Okay. Any other comments before I have Councillor McLeod second Councillor Jeffrey's motion? So then we'll get a seconder in Councillor McLeod. And any other comments or questions before we vote on that? My only comment is I supported this judicial inquiry from the outset. The cost estimates are always a moving target. I think when you set out to fix a problem, once you're committed down that road, there's no half measures. And so while the costs are mounting, I still believe that this is the best course for our community. We're fixing a problem, and it's an investment in our future processes to make sure this problem doesn't arise in our community in the future. So, Deputy Mayor.
I just wanted to echo your comments, and the key is it's an investment, and it's an investment province-wide.
Which we'll be taking up with the province. Councillor Berman.
Thank you. Can I please ask for a recorded vote?
Yes. And if there's no other questions or comments, I'll pass it over to Deputy Clerk.
Are we amending the motion that's on the table?
Yes.
We're
Yeah.
voting on the amendment.
We're voting on the amendment to not utilize the net proceeds from the sale, but instruct staff to look at taking the funds out of the reserve.
All those in favor of the amendment, please rise. And motion carried unanimously.
All right, so now we will call the vote on the main motion as amended. Councillor Madigan.
Can I get a recorded vote on this one? I think that's what Councillor Berman wanted, but
I was questioning.
Well, we're doing the amendment, now we're doing the main motion. So
All those in favor of the main motion, please rise. And motion carried unanimously. Thank you.
now I gotta find my place again. So we have no motions today, no bylaws, any notices of motion? County report, I think you did one last time.
Yeah, nothing's supposed to be.
Yeah, it was a killer report, so I think we'll take a break. And council business, older deferred business? Other business? Councillor Jeffrey?
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Something that I had brought up previously in the Development and Operations Committee is noting that direct requests that come in from deputation and or consent agenda, if they're non-statutory, I believe that they should automatically be referred to the committee that they apply to or that they're relevant to, so that we can give the public an opportunity to have input into what is being asked of us, that we can get staff's expertise and recommendations on what is being asked of us, rather than spitballing at a council meeting. I think that's why we put the committee structure in place, and I guess that it would be a good word that's been used for it is to triage those requests. And so I don't know procedurally if I have to ask for or give a notice of motion, or to ask through you to the CAO and perhaps the deputy clerk as to how we can make that happen. I just think we need to be able to have those conversations based on solid information.
And I agree with you that these standing committees were set up to also to get further public input and in a more informal discussion for council staff and the public. I'll look to the CAO for that.
Through your worship, I would support the councillor's recommendation, because I think it's where the deputation or the request involved resources. I think staff should have the ability to triage it to the respective committee before coming to council. So if it is council's will, we will be more than happy to review the requests and triage them as they come in, so they get the appropriate vetting before they are tabled on the council's agenda.
That be in the form of a staff report, or how would that be done?
That would be done basically through staff review and discussion rather than a staff report.
Okay. Is that satisfactory, Councillor?
Yes, that's terrific, thank you.
All right, so I'll look for a seconder on that, the Deputy Mayor. Any questions or comments then? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. And that is carried unanimously. Any other business? I think Councillor Comey, did you have your hand up for other business?
I do, thank you, Your Worship. A couple things. One, through you to Director McDonald. Further to our discussion, we know that we've put out to the public that the line painting is underway on our roadways. Can you please confirm that this painting will include our local crosswalks?
Director McDonald?
Through your worship, yes, I can confirm that line painting is all our road line painting. That's the long lines as well as the handwork. The two different crews, the long line crew is a large equipment, and the second crew the contractor has is the handwork. Weather has been a bit of a problem in the last few days, but we're still anticipating it to be done in the next couple of weeks.
That's fantastic news, and we had discussed in particular at 6th and Spruce how much that particular school crossing had deteriorated. And then through you, Your Worship, to Director McDonald again, just confirming that all the full-size bike racks are now back out.
McDonald?
Yes, the full-size and smaller bike racks are now in the downtown core and they're up in their normal locations.
That is awesome, thank you. And then I'm gonna take us back to talking about the asset sale proceeds and Engage Collingwood. Presently on Engage Collingwood, we say residents are encouraged in our little timeline thing here. And then we say the survey will close on June 30th, 2019. I'm just finding that date surprising, that we're closing that online survey so soon. Maybe Adam can give us an update on where we are on responses so far.
Adam?
Through your worship, we have about 600 responses to the survey. And Engage Collingwood in general has got about 2,000 site visits.
Okay, so we're still under, let's say, even what we got for Sunset Park, which I think Director Calder can correct, but I want to think that came in closer down 700. I'd like to suggest that we extend the survey through maybe the end of September. I don't think our residents are aware of how quickly this is closing, nor have we had any discussion about actual public town hall engagements.
And those will be coming. And I'll look to Adam to talk about the timeline, and the CAO can comment. But Adam, in terms of the time,
If I could let CAO.
okay.
Through your worship, I mean, we've kind of put some kind of a timeline attached to this. We need a report back to council. We need a public engagement exercise that's not just online, but there's got to be a time limit to it. Extending it to September, I think, is leaving it way too late. That doesn't give us enough time to facilitate all the public consultation and come back with the recommendations in time for the 2020 budget. So the extending it for an additional 3 months, I think, is putting our timelines in jeopardy in terms of coming back to council with any kind of recommendation. I mean, it's been out there for almost 2 months, well, actually 4 months. So, we'll do consultation for 8 months.
Okay, and
I respect that. Somehow there's a disconnect. I think council would feel that our residents do want to have input on the sale of the proceeds. So I wonder why we're falling so short on that. Like I'm just sharing that with all the councils.
Just through your mail, we've got 8 months of consultation.
I don't know that it's falling short. We're putting it out there, and part of a public engagement is they will get engaged in what they'll get engaged in. So I don't think we can expect a uniform response line across, and we've got 20 days left. And I would hope that the public who want to get involved in this will get involved in this. So maybe it's a question of some profile. So certainly we can mention it on the radio and continue to push it out through the website and make announcements.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And especially, I think we should emphasize that it's closing, that time is running out to provide input.
And well, that's the online portion. That's still be public meetings. So this is just one aspect of the public campaign.
Okay, and we will, what is the council's anticipated outcome of this? Will we receive quantitative responses? Will we see by percentage what people wanted to see? How will we receive the data with it closing in short order?
I'll look to the CAO. I don't know.
Through your worship, we'll come back with a recommendation regarding the results of the public consultation. I don't think at this stage in the game we can say whether it's going to be quantitative or qualitative. I mean, we've got to use our best judgment based on the kind of comments we receive and bring forward a report back to council. So to provide a preemptive strategy as to a qualitative or quantitative assessment, I think is premature at this stage in the game. We'll come back with a recommendation that is fulsome and that is evidence-based.
That's it.
Yes.
And before we move off of the traffic, I just would do a shout out to the Public Works Department. I've had a number of emails this week about the flashing speed signs that have gone up, and they're being well received by the public, and they're certainly a good reminder as people drive down the street to realize, they don't realize, I think, how fast they're going. So they've been well received, and congratulations and thank you to Public Works. Councillor Berman, you had other business.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I'm going to ask the CAO whether you use the word bundle, and I'm wondering, it's just the two reports that I've brought up tonight. One is the surplus management policy, and the other one is what I've noted here, revised governance structure from back in 2014. And really, I was just hoping that I could ask for those to be reviewed, because it's been a period of time, and come back, and if they're good the way they are, great. And if not, they can come back to SIC and we can discuss them. So what would, I look to you for how would you like that request to come through, or did I just do that?
I think you just did, Councillor, through you, Bishop.
Okay.
One of the things we're trying to do as part of our agenda management strategy is to bundle like items together. I think it's really important for council to consider items that are related at one council meeting rather than sort of consider them separately. That's why the plan is to bring back all of the budget items in to one SIC or one council meeting to have a discussion at one time. On the governance side, I mean, I think it would make sense to come back with some recommendations dealing with governance issues and all the nuances of that at one SIC or one council meeting. And on the issue of all of those recommendations that would inform the 2019 budget process, I think the intention would be to bring those back sometime in late summer to ensure that we have enough time and enough runway to consider them as part of the budget deliberations for 2019. So if council is in agreement, we will do our best to try and bring forward these recommendations as best as we can on a timely basis and in a consolidated fashion that will make it easier to make informed decisions on these items.
Thanks, that's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'd just like to add that insofar as the governance structure committee and council, I would hope that members of council would also be part of the discussion as to how our present committees are functioning and how we feel that we may be able to improve them. That may have been implicit in the comments of the CAO, but I just want to add specifically.
Any other business? Director Culver. Wow. This is
My apologies, Your Worship. I actually intended, going back, this what I'm about to mention was due to be a part of the SIC meeting, but there was a issue and it never arrived there. So Karen Cubitt at the last Corporate and Community Services Standing Committee provided a staff update on the terms of reference for what we've been labeling the deep dive or the review of PRC operational budget. So the terms of reference were discussed at the Standing Committee, and I'd just like to assure Council that I'll email out those terms of reference to all of you so that you have a chance to take a look at them. We're still working towards as soon as possible date for that review.
Thank you. Given the late hour, I was going to talk a bit, report back on the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiatives annual meeting in Sheboygan, but I think in the interest of time I won't. I did have one other item of business that I had spoke to Dean Culver about, and that is for the farmers market, the possibility of getting some temporary bike racks that are easy to put up along maybe the parking lot area, the edge of the parking lot, so that people aren't walking around with their bikes. And there's a few examples, one at Curry's Farm and also down in Greenmore. So you have simple horses with just a pipe running across, and people can hook their bars with a saddle over it, and they're able to lock them. But they're just very easy to use and can handle quite a number of bikes. So I'm wondering if that's something that we can look into providing as we get into the farmers market season.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, absolutely, we can look at that.
Great. So unless there's any other, who would have the motion to go in camera?
I would have that, Mayor Saunderson, moved by me, seconded by Councillor Madigan. Whereas the clerk hereby concurs the reasons for the in-camera session have been duly reviewed and considered, and the matters are authorized under the exception provisions to conduct a closed session in accordance with the Municipal Act prior to proceeding into closed session. Therefore, be it resolved that this council proceeds in camera in order to address a matter pertaining to personal matters about an identifiable individual, including town or local board employees, and the items for discussion are accessibility advisory committee applications.
I will look for the vote then. All in favor? That is carried. So we will be going in camera into the Braniff room. We'll meet there at in 7.5 minutes. And for the public watching at home, there will be a rise and report once we come out of in camera. So if you're interested in the outcome, otherwise we'll be signing off. Thanks.